When the gunman opened fire inside the crowded hospital waiting room, one man did not run. James Alvarez, a single father, a quiet security guard, threw his body between the bullets and terrified families. He took 3 shots to his own chest and shoulder to save strangers. 48 hours later, as he struggled to breathe and recover, his doorbell rang with visitors who would change everything. Follow my story until the very end, and comment below the city you are watching from so I know how far this story has traveled. The day had started like so many others, soft with ordinary routines. James stood in the dim kitchen of his small apartment frying eggs while the smell of toasted bread filled the air. The sunlight slanted through blinds, striping the counter with pale gold. In the corner of the living room, his 10-year-old daughter Bella was tying her shoelaces with exaggerated determination, her tongue sticking out the way it always did when she concentrated. "Eat before the bus comes," James reminded her. His voice was low but warm, carrying that mixture of authority and gentleness that only fathers learn after years of trial. Bella skipped into the kitchen, ponytail bouncing. She grabbed a piece of toast straight from the plate. "Don't forget," she said between bites, "today's the science test." "I'm going to ace it. Dr. Chen told me that if I keep studying hard, maybe one day I could be a doctor too." James smiled faintly. "Then you'll have to remember what we always say," she grinned. Their ritual was sacred. "I love you more than all the fish in the ocean, Daddy, and I love you more than all the stars in the sky," James whispered, kissing the top of her head. That phrase had carried them through nights of grief since Bella's mother died 3 years earlier in a car accident. It wasn't just a habit, it was a lifeline, words to cling to when the world felt uncertain. He watched her rush toward the door, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She looked so much like her mother that his chest ached. Same dark eyes, same stubborn chin. Every morning, watching Bella vanish down the hallway toward school, he felt both pride and fear. Pride because she was brave, bright, and funny. Fear because he was all she had left and he could not afford to fail her. The hospital sat 12 blocks away, a gray high-rise looming over the city streets. By 7 o'clock, James was walking its corridors, nodding to nurses, helping an elderly man find cardiology, adjusting his badge that always sat crooked. 8 years on the job had worn grooves into his life. Some colleagues called him Mr. Alvarez, others just James, but to nearly everyone, patients, visitors, tired interns, he was the one who answered questions, the one who walked them to elevators, the one who made them feel safer just by being there. This morning, Dr. Mei Chen passed him in the hallway, her coat flapping as she carried charts. "Morning, James," she called. "How's Bella doing in school?" "She got an A on her science test yesterday," he answered with a proud smile. "Says she wants to be like you someday." Dr. Chen paused, her face lighting up. "She has a good role model at home. You should be proud." Her words settled in his chest like a glowing ember. By noon, the hospital buzzed with its usual rhythm machines, beeping gurneys, rolling phones, ringing at the nurse station. James checked the parking garage, escorted a nervous teenager to radiology, and laughed softly at a child wearing superhero pajamas. It felt like an ordinary Tuesday, a day of routine of paperwork and footsteps echoing across sterile floors. But at 2:30 p.m., everything cracked open. James was near the main entrance when shouting split the air. A scream carried from the emergency waiting area, sharp, terrified. He turned, heart clenching. Through the glass doors he saw him. A young man in dark clothes, a gun clutched in trembling hands. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, the eyes of someone cornered by the world. Panic rippled instantly. People dove for cover. A child cried out. An old woman tried to wheel her chair backward, too slow. Others froze completely, terror rooting them to chairs. James felt ice in his veins, but training pulled his body forward. He did not think about himself. He thought about those who couldn't move, who had nowhere to hide. "Everyone get down," he shouted, voice cutting through the chaos. "Stay low. Move to the exits." The gunman swung his weapon toward him. James stopped 10 feet away. Hands lifted. Behind the man, Dr. Chen was ushering families through a side door, whispering urgently, but there were still dozens in danger. "Stay back!" the gunman yelled, voice breaking. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to." James studied his face. This wasn't pure malice. This was agony, desperation. He recognized it instantly, the same raw desperation he had once felt sitting by his wife's hospital bed, knowing there was nothing he could do to save her. "What's your name?" James asked calmly. "What does it matter?" "It matters," James said softly, "because I want to help you. My name's James. I'm not a cop. I just want to talk." The young man's grip trembled. For the first time, tears shone in his eyes. "My mom," he stammered. "They won't help her. She's upstairs in room 314. She's dying and they won't treat her because we don't have insurance. They're sending her home to die." James's chest tightened. He thought of Bella. He thought of the nights he had prayed he could do something, anything, to ease his wife's suffering. "I hear you," James said gently. "What's her name?" "Elena. Elena Rodriguez." James nodded slowly. "You love her. You're scared. I get that. I'd do anything for my daughter, too. But this isn't the way. These people," he gestured at the waiting room, "they're just sick, scared like your mom. They aren't the ones making decisions." The gun lowered a fraction. Hope flickered like a fragile flame, but behind James, footsteps thundered. Another guard, new and experienced, rushed in, weapon drawn. "Drop it," the guard barked. Miguel flinched, panic exploding across his face. His finger tensed on the trigger. And James saw it all in a split second, the muzzle swinging toward a mother crouched with her 2 children, eyes wide with terror. He didn't think. He moved. He lunged forward, arms wide. The first bullet tore into his shoulder, a burst of heat and pain. The second slammed his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. The third ripped into his leg, dropping him to one knee. But he stayed upright, body between the gunmen and the family behind him. The sound of screaming blurred. His vision spun. The gun clattered to the floor. Miguel fell to his knees, horrified at what he had done. I didn't want..." His words dissolved into sobs. Dr. Chen was suddenly at James's side, hands pressing against the bleeding wounds. "Stay with me, James. Stay with me." His lips trembled. One word slipped out. "Bella." Darkness closed in. The world blurred into shadow and sound. James drifted in and out of darkness, his body heavy, every breath like swallowing fire. He remembered fragments, bright lights in the operating room, the metallic sting of antiseptic voices shouting medical terms that meant little but sounded urgent. Somewhere above him, machines hummed steadily, counting out heartbeats that might have been his last. Through it all, one thought repeated louder than the noise, stronger than the pain. Bella. When his eyes finally opened, the world was washed in a dull glow. White ceiling tiles stretched above him. An IV line tugged at his arm. Bandages wrapped around his chest and shoulder like armor made of cloth. His lips cracked as he whispered, "Bella." A nurse startled at his voice and leaned closer, relief softening her features. "Mr. Alvarez, you're awake." "Thank God." "Don't try to move yet. How long?" His throat was raw. "How long have I been?" "Almost 48 hours." Her voice lowered. "You've been in and out, but you made it. You're alive, alive." The word rang hollow, as if survival itself was a gift too heavy to hold. "Where's my daughter?" he rasped. "She's fine. She's been with Mrs. Peterson, your neighbor. Sweet girl. She's been here every day waiting for you." Tears pricked his eyes. Bella had been in this hospital while he lay suspended between life and death. The thought burned worse than the stitches pulling at his chest. A memory surfaced, the last thing he said before darkness swallowed him. Her name, Bella. It had been his prayer, his plea, his tether to the world. And somehow he had been answered. The door creaked open. Dr. Chen slipped inside, exhaustion written across her face. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, but her eyes lit with genuine warmth when they landed on him. "You scared us, James," she whispered, pulling a chair close to the bed. "You lost so much blood, inches away from your heart." He tried to smile, but his lips trembled. "Guess I've got a stubborn heart. Stubborn doesn't even begin to cover it." He swallowed hard. "The gunmen, the families, what happened?" Her expression shifted surprise. First, then something like admiration. "Even after everything you're asking about him?" "Tell me." She sighed. "His name is Miguel Rodriguez, 23. He surrendered as soon as you went down. He's been in custody ever since. And his mother, Elena, she's still fighting upstairs. She doesn't have insurance, but things are changing. People want to help her now." James let his head sink into the pillow. Relief washed through him, tinged with sorrow. He had taken bullets meant for strangers, yet he couldn't stop thinking about the boy with the broken voice and the desperate eyes. The door opened again. Bella's small figure stood framed by the hallway light. Her backpack hung off one shoulder, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Her cheeks were blotchy from crying, but her eyes, those deep brown eyes, shone bright the moment they found him. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked. James's heart nearly burst. He stretched his good arm, ignoring the pain that flared in his chest. "Come here, sweetheart." She rushed forward, careful as she leaned against the bed, her tiny arms wrapped around him, trembling but strong. "I was so scared," she whispered into his shirt. "They said you were hurt so bad. I thought you weren't coming back." "I'm here," he murmured, kissing her hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Mrs. Peterson stood quietly at the door, watching with watery eyes. She had kept Bella safe, fed, comforted, all while James lay unconscious. He mouthed a silent thank you, and she nodded, her own expression a mixture of relief and sorrow. For a long time, father and daughter clung to each other. The monitors beeped steadily. Outside, the hospital moved with its usual urgency, but in that small room, time slowed to the rhythm of their breathing. Mrs. Peterson said, "You're a hero," Bella finally whispered. "She said you saved people." James closed his eyes. The word hero felt heavy. He didn't feel like one. He felt like a father who did what he had to do. I couldn't let them get hurt," he said softly. "Not when I could do something." Bella lifted her face, tears glistening. "That's what heroes do." He brushed her cheek gently. "Heroes are just people who love enough to protect others. That's all." Later that evening, after Bella had gone home with Mrs. Peterson, James lay awake, the ceiling swimming in shadows. Every sound of the hospital seemed sharper wheels squeaking on tile intercoms, buzzing the faint echo of a baby crying somewhere down the hall. He thought of Miguel again, the trembling in his voice when he shouted about his mother, the way the gun lowered just a little when he realized someone was listening. James wondered if that other guard hadn't rushed in, gun drawn. Could the story have ended differently? Could Miguel have walked away without blood on his hands and bullets in James's body? He shifted, grimacing as pain seared his side. His thoughts spiraled back to Bella. Her face when she ran into the room, the way her arms tightened around him, as if she could hold him in the world by sheer force of will. She deserved stability, safety. She deserved to never feel the fear of losing another parent. And yet he had risked leaving her alone. The guilt and pride twisted together until he could no longer separate them. Footsteps approached in the hallway. The door eased open once more. This time it wasn't Bella or Dr. Chen. A group entered, 3 figures silhouetted against the fluorescent light. A man in a police uniform, a woman in a dark suit, and a tall, composed woman James recognized immediately as the mayor. "Mr. Alvarez," the suited woman said, stepping forward. "I'm Detective Laura Simmons. This is Chief Robert Harlan and Mayor Patricia Davis. We wanted to see you personally." James struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as bandages pulled. "Please don't. I'm not. Don't strain yourself," the mayor interrupted gently. "We're here to thank you." James frowned. "I was just doing my job." Chief Harlan shook his head firmly. "No, sir. Your job was to call for backup, maintain order until police arrived. What you did, what you chose, went far beyond that." Detective Simmons' gaze softened. "You threw yourself into the line of fire for people you didn't even know. You saved mothers, children, elderly patients who couldn't move fast enough. At least 6 lives, maybe more." The mayor leaned closer. "The city intends to award you the Medal of Valor. It's the highest honor we can give a civilian." James stared at them, disoriented, uncomfortable beneath the weight of their praise. "Those people weren't strangers," he whispered hoarsely. "They were under my protection. That's all that mattered." Silence fell for a beat, heavy but reverent. The mayor nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we're here." But James's mind was already drifting back to the boy with the gun, the mother upstairs fighting for her life, and the way desperation could turn love into something dangerous. As the officials filed out, leaving behind promises of medals and ceremonies, James lay back against the pillow. He wasn't thinking of honor or recognition. He was thinking of forgiveness, of second chances, of a young man named Miguel Rodriguez, and the hope that somehow this story wasn't finished yet. The night passed slowly. James drifted between shallow sleep and sharp waves of pain that jolted him awake. Each time he found himself staring at the pale hospital ceiling, listening to the muted chorus of a place that never slept. Machines humming, footsteps shuffling, muffled voices echoing down sterile halls. It wasn't the physical pain that gnawed at him the most. It was the weight of what he'd seen. The young man's eyes, wide, desperate, filled not with hatred, but with grief. The terrified family in the waiting room clinging to each other as the gun swung their way. The heavy thud of bullets tearing through flesh. His flesh before silence and horror swallowed the room. Every time he closed his eyes, the images replayed. He saw himself moving forward, arms outstretched, body absorbing impact after impact, and then darkness. Morning came. A faint orange glow leaked through the blinds, softening the harsh whites of the hospital room. Dr. Chen stepped in with her clipboard, the scent of coffee trailing her. She looked at him, then shook her head gently. "You're too stubborn to quit, James." "Not stubborn," he croaked, throat still raw. "Just had a reason." She paused, studying him. "Your daughter." He nodded. His eyes burned. "She's the only reason." Dr. Chen pulled up a chair. "Do you want to know what happened after?" He hesitated, then whispered, "Tell me." She set the clipboard aside and leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "When you went down, the gunman dropped his weapon immediately. He collapsed on the floor, sobbing. He kept repeating, 'I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it.' Police took him without resistance." James swallowed, throat tight. "And the people in the waiting room alive. Because of you." Her voice steadied. "Maria Santos and her 2 children. Mrs. Jennings in the wheelchair. An older man who couldn't get out of his seat. They're all alive because you put yourself in front of them." James closed his eyes. Relief washed over him, tangled with exhaustion. Dr. Chen hesitated, then added softly, "The boy Miguel, he keeps asking about you. Even in custody, he's begging to know if you're alive. He feels guilty." James opened his eyes slowly. "He's not evil." "No," she admitted, "just broken, desperate." The silence that followed was thick, filled with unspoken truths. Hours passed. Bella returned in the afternoon, skipping through the door with Mrs. Peterson close behind. Her face lit when she saw him awake, really awake, not drifting in and out like before. "Daddy," she cried, running to the bed. "Careful," Mrs. Peterson warned gently. Bella slowed just enough to avoid hurting him, but her small arms still wrapped around him tight. She buried her face in his chest, breathing him in as though to convince herself he was real. James closed his eyes, kissing the top of her head. "I dreamed you wouldn't wake up," she whispered. "But you did. You always keep your promises." James's chest clenched. "I'll keep every promise I can, sweetheart." That evening, the hallway outside his room grew unusually loud. James shifted uncomfortably as voices approached. The door opened again, this time with no warning. It wasn't doctors or nurses. It was reporters. A nurse hurried in behind them, flustered, trying to block cameras. "You can't be in here, he's recovering." But questions flew through the air anyway. "Mr. Alvarez, how does it feel to be called a hero? Did you know you saved at least 6 people? What do you want to say to the gunman?" Flashes blinded his tired eyes. Bella shrank back toward Mrs. Peterson, clinging to her hand. James's heart pounded. He hated the chaos, hated seeing his daughter frightened again. "Enough!" He rasped, voice hoarse but steady. "Not here. Not in front of her." The room fell silent for a moment. Even the clicking shutters stopped. "Please," he added softer this time. "She's been through enough." The hospital's PR staff swept the reporters out soon after, apologizing profusely. James sank back into his pillow, sweat dampening his forehead. Bella returned to his side, eyes wide. "Why do they want to talk to you so much?" she asked. He brushed her hair back gently. "Because people make stories out of moments, Bella. But I didn't do it to be in a story. I did it because I had to." She studied him, serious beyond her years. "But maybe stories help people remember. Maybe that's good." Her words sank deep, wiser than anything he could argue. That night, sleep was restless. When James finally drifted off, dreams dragged him back to the waiting room. The panic screams, the trembling gun, the split-second choice. Only this time in the dream, he didn't move fast enough. The mother and her children were struck. Bella's face appeared among them, crying, reaching out. He woke gasping, heart-hammering sweat soaking the sheets. For a long time he sat upright, staring at the faint city lights glowing beyond the blinds. His body hurt, but it was the ache inside his chest that throbbed worst of all. 2 days later, strength began returning in small doses. He managed to sit up without collapsing. He could sip water without choking. And with each improvement, more visitors came. Dr. Chen wheeled in an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes, Mrs. Jennings, the one he had shielded. "Mr. Alvarez," she whispered, clutching his hand with surprising strength. "You don't know me, but you saved my life. My son told me to tell you, our family owes you everything." James squeezed her hand weakly. "You don't owe me. Just live. Love your family." "That's thanks enough." Tears slid down her wrinkled cheeks. The next day, Maria Santos entered with her 2 children. The kids carried folded pieces of paper. "This is for you," little Isabella said, holding up a drawing of a man in uniform with angel wings. "Mama says you're our angel." James's throat closed. He looked at the crayon strokes, uneven but full of heart, and felt something deep inside crack open. He glanced at Maria, who had tears in her eyes. "I thought I lost them that day," she whispered. "But then you were there. You gave me my babies back." James shook his head faintly. "How could I not? You were protecting your children. I just did what any parent would do." Later that evening, Bella curled in the chair beside his bed, watching him with wide eyes. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think the man with the gun has a little girl too?" James froze. The question pierced him more than the bullets had. "Don't know," he admitted softly. "But I know he has a mother, and he loves her the way I love you." Bella thought for a moment, then whispered, "Then maybe he was scared like you were scared when Mommy died." His eyes filled. He reached out, taking her hand. "You're braver than you know, Bella." As he drifted towards sleep, James realized the story was no longer just about bullets and scars. It was about connections, the way pain linked strangers, the way love drove impossible choices. And somewhere beyond the walls of that hospital, a young man named Miguel Rodriguez was waiting, haunted, guilty, desperate for forgiveness. James knew their paths would cross again. It was only a matter of time. Morning crept in like a careful visitor, pale and quiet, brushing the blinds with a thin ribbon of light. The nurse changed James's dressings with practiced hands. Gauze peeled away. A sharp chill kissed his skin. Tape pressed down again, snug but gentle. Pain came in measured breaths, manageable when he focused on the soft metronome of the monitor. "You're healing," she said, as if naming a promise. "Slow but steady." "Steady's good," he murmured. He thought of Bella's handwriting pinned to the corkboard by the sink. A wobbly, "I love you more than all the fish crayon notes she'd drawn years ago and begged a nurse to tape up yesterday." It made the room feel less like a battlefield and more like a home with a dented sofa and a squeaky ceiling fan and 2 mugs drying on a rack. "Your daughter's coming after school," the nurse added. "She called to confirm." "Twice." "Sounds like her," he said, and smiled, small and aching. Dr. Chen slipped in with a folder under her arm and fatigue in her eyes that no coffee could hide. She greeted him with a nod that felt like family. "We're convening a social work team for upstairs," she said without ceremony. "Room 314. Elena James answered, already knowing. "Elena," she echoed. "We've contacted a charity network. Oncology is reviewing her case for compassionate coverage. It won't be perfect, but it's not nothing." "Not nothing," he repeated. The words breathed warmth into the cold corners of his chest. "She's scared," Dr. Chen continued, voice softening. "But she's fighting. And the buzz about what happened, it's waking people up. Donors volunteers a patient advocacy group. A door you cracked open is swinging wider than you realize." James turned his head toward the window. Outside, traffic noise swelled and faded like the tide. Far below the main entrance sat under a slate of sky, people moving in and out with grocery bags of sadness and relief. "Thank you," he said. Dr. Chen hesitated. "I didn't do this alone." "You started it," he replied. "You always do." She looked away embarrassed, then set the folder on the tray. There's more. A detective wants a few minutes. If you're up for it, send her in. Detective Laura Simmons entered with a notebook and an expression that had learned how to be kind without getting soft. She took in the room, the monitors, the taped card, the stiffness in James's posture, and pulled the chair close. Mr. Alvarez. James, he corrected. Please. James? She nodded. We're working with the district attorney. Officially, the charges on Miguel Rodriguez are serious aggravated assault with a deadly weapon discharge of a firearm in a public place, reckless endangerment. But the DA is considering the full context, his mother James said. His mother, she affirmed, and his cooperation. And your conduct. James shifted a seam of pain running hot across his shoulder. My conduct. You de-escalated. You saw a person, not just a threat. You never drew a weapon. Your statement matters. What do you need from me? A victim impact statement. It can be read in court. It can shape sentencing. The DA's office is open to diversion counseling, community service, mandatory therapy restitution if you support it. He stared at his hand on the blanket. The knuckles were scraped and purpled. He remembered the weight of panic in Miguel's voice, the way the gun sagged when someone finally heard him. I'll support it, he said at last, with conditions, counseling, supervision, something that builds a life, not ruins one. Detective Simmons let out a breath she'd been holding. I thought you might say that. Protect my daughter's privacy, he added, voice tightening. No cameras near her school, no address in the news. She's 10. You have my word, Simmons said, and it sounded like a promise she'd die before she broke. She closed the notebook, then hesitated. One more thing. He wrote you a note. Our office screened it. No manipulations, no pressure, just a young man trying to apologize. She produced an evidence bag with a folded sheet inside, blue lines, black ink. The handwriting was uneven, too forceful in some places, faint in others, a confession leaking through a pen. James held the bag with his good hand and read, Mr. Alvarez. I don't know how to say I'm sorry big enough. I keep seeing you stand in front of me like a wall made of light. I keep hearing your voice trying to help me even when I didn't deserve help. My mother says the world sent you to us. I don't know what I believe. I only know I will try to be the kind of man who deserves the life you gave back to me. If the court lets me, I want to work to serve, to learn how not to be this kind of scared ever again. I will carry your name in my mouth like a prayer. Miguel. The words blurred. James blinked until the letters steadied. He remembered another hospital room, another bed, another morning. His wife's hand slackening in his, the monitor slipping into a flatness that had cut the sky in two. He had learned then how grief can make you want to tear the world apart just to find a lever that stops the hurt. He understood fear. He understood what desperation does to judgment. Tell him, James said quietly, giving the bag back, that forgiveness isn't free. It's work. And I'm willing to do that work with him if he's willing. Detective Simmons swallowed. I'll tell him. By mid-afternoon, a hospital chaplain stopped by, not with scripture first, but with water and silence. He sat without fidgeting, without filling the air with tidy reasons pain exists. His presence felt like a porch light, simple, steady on. I wasn't brave, James said after a long while. I was fast. That's not the same. Sometimes it is, the chaplain answered. Sometimes the bravest thing is the thing done before you have time to think about yourself. James stared at the ceiling. What if bravery leaves my daughter without a father? Then bravery must learn boundaries. The chaplain said, not unkind. Courage isn't a death wish. It's the discipline to love wisely. James let those words sit in the room. He could feel Bella's small heartbeat against his chest from last night, the way she had tucked herself carefully under his arm, careful not to press the wounds, but refusing to let go. Thank you, he said. The chaplain stood. We'll be here, however you need us. A hospital social worker came next with a cardboard box and a shy smile. These started piling up in the lobby, she said. We thought you should see them. Inside letters, cards folded. Notebook pages, a handful of gift cards, a crocheted square someone's grandmother had made for courage, and a child's plastic medal on a red ribbon that read, Number 1, Dad. James picked up the metal and laughed, then choked on the laugh until it became something else. Raw, unguarded, a tremor that left him wiping his eyes with the back of his wrist. He opened 3 letters, then 5, then lost track. You didn't just save lives, you reminded us what a life is for. My husband died in this hospital last year. I wish he'd had someone like you in the room. If the family upstairs needs help, my church has a fund. Tell them to call. People are complicated, the social worker said, as if explaining the weather. But when they're good, they're really good. He nodded. Tell the donors if they want to help start with Elena Rodriguez, and then build a bridge for the next Elena and the next. She scribbled a note. Already happening. When Bella arrived after school, she had pain on her fingers and a storm of questions in her eyes. She climbed into the chair, drew her knees up, and sat like a little bird on a fence, ready to fly, unwilling to leave. The kids at school, she said in a rush. Some of them called me Hero's daughter. One boy asked if you're famous now. I told him you were famous before because you make good grilled cheese. James laughed, then winced, pressing his palm carefully to his ribs. That might be the truest headline I've ever had. She sobered. A girl asked if the bad man will go to prison forever. He chose his words slowly. He did a terrible, dangerous thing, but he was hurting. The court will decide. I told the detective I want him to get help. Real help. Not just punishment. Bella studied him. Is that allowed? It should be, he said. Sometimes the bravest thing a community can do is choose to build people instead of break them. She nodded, then tucked her hand in his the way she used to when crossing a busy street. I like building better. Me too, he said, and meant it. At dusk, the sky bruised purple and blue. The city's lights flicked on one by one as if remembering their cues. From his window, James saw movement gather near the main entrance clusters of people, small. At first, then more. Someone carried a cardboard box. Someone else carried a bundle that could only be candles. Dr. Chen stepped in, followed by the social worker. It's happening, she said softly. A community vigil. People asked if they could stand outside, hold light, say thanks. James's first instinct was to refuse, to keep the circle small, to shield Bella from more noise, more flashing cameras, more strangers who meant well and might still overwhelm her. But he watched a little boy at the curb lift a poster that was almost bigger than he was. A woman beside him leaned down to help him hold it steady. The letters, messy and bright, faced the glass. Thank you for saving moms. Okay, James said, voice low. Let them. But make it about hope. About Elena. About the programs we need, not about me in a cape I don't own. We'll try, Dr. Chen promised. We'll ask the crowd to keep it gentle. No shouting, just light. The social worker cleared her throat. One more update. If bail is posted, the court will allow Miguel to attend with officers present. He requested permission to stand at the back. Quietly. James's heart kicked hard once, then steadied. He imagined those desperate eyes now rimmed with shame and something like resolve. He imagined a young man holding a candle he did not deserve and trying inch by inch to deserve it anyway. Let him come, James said. If Elena can see him from her window, maybe it will help. He put his hand flat on the blanket as if pressing down a cornerstone. He could feel the tremor in his palm, the echo of bullets he would always carry. But beneath it, he heard something else quieter but stronger, a new foundation being poured. Not just for Miguel, not just for Elena. For all the rooms like this one, with ceilings like chessboards and machines speaking in codes, and human hearts trying against all odds to choose love over fear. James closed his eyes briefly, opened them, watched the first candles bloom below like a field of small, stubborn stars. Okay, he whispered almost to himself. Let there be light. The first candle lit below his hospital window looked like nothing more than a flicker, one small flame trembling against the evening wind. But then another appeared beside it, then 3, then 10. Soon the entrance of Metro General glowed with a fragile sea of light, every candle raised in hands that shook or steadied or simply held on as though keeping the darkness at bay. James sat propped against pillows, Bella curled in the chair at his side, her head leaned gently against his arm, her breath warm and even. She had fallen asleep there, refusing to go home until he did. Dr. Chen tugged the blinds wider. "You should see this," she whispered. James blinked through the glass chest tight. Children clutched handmade posters scribbled in bright markers. "Thank you, James. Our angel. Heroes live here." Elderly men stood with hats in their hands, bowing their heads. Nurses still in scrubs had gathered badges, swinging exhaustion etched across their faces, but softened by pride. And scattered among them were strangers, people he had never met, who came only because they heard of what happened, because courage had pulled them together like gravity. "Daddy, look." Bella's voice startled him. She wasn't asleep after all. Her eyes were wide now, shimmering in the glow outside. She pointed through the glass. At the front of the crowd, Mrs. Jennings sat in her wheelchair, holding a candle high with surprising steadiness. Beside her stood her son, one hand on her shoulder, the other hand raised in salute. Not far away, Maria Santos clutched both her children, their little arms wrapped tight around her waist. Isabella lifted a crayon drawing over her head, James in uniform, with wings that reached beyond the paper's edges. "Do you see Bella?" whispered. James nodded. His throat was too tight for words. The door opened. A nurse wheeled in a portable radio, setting it carefully on the windowsill. "The crowd wanted you to hear," she explained. Static crackled, then cleared. A voice rose through the speaker, shaky, young, familiar. James froze. "My name is Miguel Rodriguez," the voice said, carrying across the night like a confession. "I am the one who brought fear into this place. I am the one who pulled a gun when I should have pulled hope. And I am the one who shot the man you are here to honor." A ripple moved through the crowd below, gasps, murmurs, silence stretching thin. Bella's hand gripped her father's tightly. "I need you to know something." Miguel continued, his voice breaking. "Mr. Alvarez didn't see me as a monster. Even with a gun in my hand, even when fear twisted me into something I'm not. He spoke to me. He asked my name. He told me he wanted to help. And when I lost control, when my finger squeezed the trigger, he didn't protect himself. He protected families, children, strangers. He saved lives." James closed his eyes. The boy's words cut and healed at once. Miguel's voice grew steadier, though tears laced it. "Because of him, my mother is alive today. People saw what happened. They opened their hearts. They raised money for her treatment. For the first time in months, we have hope instead of despair. Mr. Alvarez saved her too, in a way. And he saved me." The crowd was silent now, listening with a reverence usually reserved for prayer. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. But I promise this: I will spend every day of my life trying to be the kind of man Mr. Alvarez believed I could be in that moment. A man who protects instead of destroys. A man who chooses love over fear. Thank you, Mr. Alvarez. I am sorry. And I will be better." His words ended. The radio hissed softly. Then the crowd erupted applause sobs, the sound of candles being lifted higher, as though light itself could reach the man in the hospital bed. James felt wetness streaking his face. He hadn't realized he was crying. Bella stood on tiptoe at the window, her small palm pressed against the glass. She turned toward him, eyes shining. "Daddy, do you hear? Even he knows you're a hero." James shook his head, swallowing hard. "No, I'm just a man who did what had to be done. But that's what makes you a hero," she whispered. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, painting the walls in soft gold. The vigil had ended hours before, but its warmth lingered like a tide that hadn't yet pulled back. James shifted, wincing, but stronger than yesterday. A tray of untouched breakfast sat nearby. He wasn't hungry. His mind churned with images of last night, the flickering flames, Miguel's trembling voice. Bella's hand pressed against the window. The door clicked. Dr. Chen entered, her expression unreadable until it softened. "How are you holding up?" "Like someone used me for target practice," he muttered. She chuckled lightly, then grew serious. "I wanted you to know, Miguel has been granted supervised release until trial. Community leaders advocated for it after hearing his speech. He'll be required to attend counseling stay under strict watch. But he's free for now." James inhaled slowly. Relief mingled with unease. He asked if he could see you. Dr. Chen added, "Not now, not today, but soon." James let the thought settle. His chest ached not just from wounds, but from the weight of choice. That evening, Bella perched on the edge of his bed, swinging her legs. Mrs. Peterson says people are leaving food at our door. She says the mailbox is too full to close. James laughed softly. Guess we'll be eating casseroles for months. She tilted her head. Do you think the one who hurt you, will really change? James looked into her serious eyes. I think he already started. Change isn't a switch. It's a journey, and sometimes it takes falling as low as you can before you climb. Bella thought about this, then leaned closer. Maybe we can help him climb. Her words stunned him. Out of the mouths of children came truths adults were too hardened to admit. He kissed her forehead gently. Maybe we can. Late that night, after Bella had gone home with Mrs. Peterson again, James sat awake with the radio still on his windowsill. He replayed Miguel's voice in his mind. Each word felt like a seed dropped into soil. What grew from it depended on light water time and forgiveness. James wasn't sure how ready he was, but he knew this much: if a boy desperate enough to pick up a gun could stand before hundreds and admit his shame, then maybe there was a way forward. Maybe the world could bend toward mercy even after gunfire shattered it. The hospital quieted after midnight, but James lay awake, his body aching in too many places to let him sleep. The monitors hummed, the hallway lights flickered faintly, and somewhere in the distance a janitor's mop swished rhythmically across the tile. He pressed a hand gingerly against his chest. Beneath the layers of bandage, he could still feel the echo of the bullets, the heat, the blunt force, the sound that had split his world in two. But beneath the pain lived something else, a stubborn, steady heartbeat that refused to quit. And in the silence, he thought again of Miguel's trembling voice on the radio. I will spend every day of my life trying to be the kind of man Mr. Alvarez believed I could be. Those words repeated soft but insistent until sleep finally pulled him under. By morning, the world outside his window was alive again. Cars honked, ambulance sirens wailed, delivery trucks rumbled down the street. But inside his room, time still moved slower every hour, marked by nurses checking vitals, doctors reviewing charts, visitors tiptoeing in with cautious smiles. Bella burst in just after school, still in her uniform. She carried a brown paper bag clutched tight. Daddy, look what Mrs. Peterson helped me make. She plopped the bag onto his lap. Inside, wrapped in foil, was a lopsided grilled cheese sandwich. His throat tightened as he pulled it out, the smell of butter and toast filling the sterile room. Sweetheart, did you really? She nodded proudly. I used the skillet all by myself. Mrs. Peterson just watched. James bit into the sandwich. The bread was burnt at the edges, the cheese uneven, but to him it was perfect. He chewed slowly, savoring each bite like it was a feast. Bella studied him anxiously. Is it okay? He smiled. It's the best sandwich I've ever had. Her shoulders sagged with relief, and then she giggled, curling up at his side. Later that afternoon, the mayor returned this time with Chief Harlan and Detective Simmons. Their presence filled the room, but James stayed calm, his hand resting lightly on Bella's back. We won't stay long, Mayor Davis said gently. We wanted to update you. The City Council voted unanimously to award you the Medal of Valor at a public ceremony. James shifted uncomfortably. I don't need medals. It's not about need, the mayor replied. It's about recognition. You showed courage that inspired an entire community, that deserves to be honored. Bella's eyes widened. Daddy, you'll get a medal, like a superhero. He looked at her, then back at the officials. If I accept, it's not for me. It's for them. He gestured toward the window where yesterday's vigil had gathered, for the people who believed, for the families who lived. Chief Harlan nodded firmly. That's exactly why we want to do this. Detective Simmons stepped forward. Miguel asked us to tell you he wants to meet when you're ready. No cameras, no reporters, just the two of you. And his mother, if she's strong enough. James's chest tightened. The thought of facing the boy who had shot him filled him with both dread and strange compassion. I'll see him, he said after a pause. But not yet. I need to heal first. For Bella. Bella squeezed his hand under the blanket. I'll be there too, Daddy. The detective smiled faintly. You're braver than most adults, young lady. That evening, Maria Santos returned with her children. This time she brought something more than drawings. She held out a folded photo, an image of her family taken just 2 weeks before the shooting. Her kids were smiling, arms looped around her neck, faces bright with life. I want you to have this, Maria said, her voice trembling. So you never forget the faces you saved. James accepted the photo with both hands. He stared at it, his vision blurring. Then he looked at Bella, who leaned against him, curiously peering at the picture. They're alive because of you, Maria whispered, and I will never, ever forget that. James swallowed hard. I only did what I had to. Any father would have. Maria shook her head firmly. Not every father is willing to take bullets for strangers. Don't diminish what you did. Her children each hugged James carefully before leaving their tiny arms wrapping gently around him. After they were gone, James placed the photo on the nightstand beside Bella's crayon note. Together they formed a small altar of meaning reminders that his pain had purpose. Night fell again, but this time James wasn't haunted by dreams of gunfire. Instead, he dreamed of light, candles flickering, Bella's laughter echoing, and Miguel's voice trembling but determined, vowing to become better. When he woke, dawn painted the walls pale pink. For the first time since the shooting, he felt a fragile sense of peace. Dr. Chen entered with her usual briskness, but today she smiled. Your vitals are strong. We'll start physical therapy soon. You're healing James. He nodded. One step at a time. She lingered by the window looking out. Do you realize what you've done? The hospital board met last night. They're creating a new program, funding for patients without insurance, social workers on call, emergency support for families in crisis. It's already being called the Alvarez Initiative. James froze. What? It started because of you, she said simply. Because you listened to Miguel. Because you reminded all of us what this place is supposed to be. He shook his head slowly, overwhelmed. I didn't want that kind of legacy. Dr. Chen's voice softened. Legacies don't ask for permission. They're born from what we choose when it matters most. Later that day, Bella climbed onto his bed with a serious look on her face. Daddy, can I ask something? Anything. If the man comes to see you, will you forgive him? James hesitated. He looked at her small, searching eyes that deserved truth. I don't know yet, he admitted. Forgiveness is hard. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't erase the pain. Bella leaned against him, whispering, But Mommy always said love is stronger than fear. Maybe forgiveness is too. He kissed her hair, his eyes filling. You're wiser than you should be. I learned from you, she murmured. That night before sleep claimed him. James stared once more at the photo on his nightstand, the Santos children alive and smiling. Bella's crayon note, a constant reminder of love's stubbornness, and he whispered into the dim light, as though speaking to the young man he hadn't yet faced. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I want to try. For her. For them. For all of us. Morning therapy hurt. Not the sharp kind. The heavy dragging kind that reminded James his body had been broken stitched and asked to trust itself again. The physical therapist, a patient woman named Lila, rolled a stool beside the bed and set a blue spirometer on the tray. We build slow, she said. We celebrate small. Define small. James rasped. You hit this line. She drew a mark on the clear chamber with a dry erase pen. Tomorrow, we aim higher. He lifted the mouthpiece and inhaled carefully. Pain crawled under his ribs like heat through wires. The little ball climbed, trembled, held. Lila smiled. That's a win. He exhaled dizzy. Feels like a mile. Most miles are made of inches. They worked through gentle movements. Ankle pumps, shoulder slides he could manage without tearing stitches. Breath in, breath out. The clock swept its hands slowly, unwilling to rush him. By the end, sweat slicked his temples. His breath came steadier. Lila capped the marker. You're stubborn. Occupational hazard. Keep it. We'll need it. The hospital administrator arrived with a portfolio and a careful smile. He hovered in the doorway as if approaching a chapel. Mr. Alvarez. I'm Daniel Reeves, COO. James, he corrected. Not unkind. James. Reeves stepped in. I'll be brief. The board met. We'd like to offer you Director of Security when you're cleared. The words hung in the air like a banner he hadn't asked to hang. Higher pay. Full tuition assistance for dependents your daughter would qualify. Expanded health coverage. A team under you. Training budget. Authority to implement the crisis intervention protocols Dr. Chen recommended. James looked at the window. Sunlight lay across the sill like a quiet animal. I'm grateful, he said. But titles don't fix what put a gun in that boy's hand. Reeves nodded. We're not pretending they do. We need leadership. You tried to talk before you bled. That matters. If I say yes, James said we start with people, not locks. Counselors in the lobby, social workers in triage, a hotline by every elevator, de-escalation training for every guard. And we fund it permanently, not just until headlines fade. Reeves didn't blink. Yes, I also need a schedule that lets me be a father. We can do that. Bella, quietly coloring at the small table, glanced up. Does that mean Daddy gets to tell other guards to be kind first? Reeves crouched to her height. It means exactly that. She nodded, solemnly satisfied. Okay. Reeves left a packet on the tray. Heel first. Detective Simmons arrived next jacket, unbuttoned a pen tucked behind her ear. She set a recorder on the table and didn't press start. No media. No surprises, she said. Just checking on you. I'm here, he answered. You are. That changes what justice can look like. Meaning, the DA wants a restorative justice meeting. Victim and offender. Mediator present, if you choose. He pictured a plain room, 2 chairs. Truth spoken quietly. I'll do it, he said. When Elena is strong enough to sit beside her son. Simmons nodded. There's something else. She slid a tablet across his victim impact statement, cursor blinking. You can say anything. We'll respect it. He typed slowly. My daughter's name is Bella. She is 10. She has already lost her mother. On Tuesday, she almost lost her father. I do not minimize what happened, but I also do not minimize why. Pain backed a young man into a corner he didn't know how to leave. He must be accountable. He must be guided. Prison alone cannot teach him what he needs to learn. People can. He added one more line. If the court permits, I will meet him. I will tell him about fear and why love is harder and better. Simmons blinked hard. Thank you. Afternoon thinned into a lavender hush. Bella sprawled in the chair with a library book open across her knees. James dozed, woke-dozed. Dreams flashed the waiting room, the muzzle, the family. He covered the world, holding its breath before breaking. The chaplain returned with 2 paper cups of tea. He didn't preach. He sat hands around the heat, letting silence do its work. I keep thinking about the other guard, James said. He's getting crucified online. Have you talked to him? No. Maybe you should. He panicked. James studied his scabbed knuckles. Fear writes sloppy orders. Then write new ones, the chaplain said gently. Out loud. James nodded. After. At dusk, the sky over the city bruised blue. Dr. Chen slipped in, voice lowered. Elena had a good afternoon. She asked if she could see the crowd if they gather again. Lift her shade, James said. Let her watch the light. Dr. Chen's smile tilted, tender. She told me to tell you she's praying for you. He let that sit in his chest like a candle cupped against wind. Night pressed its ear to the window. Bella slept curled like a comma at the foot of the bed. One hand tangled in the ribbon of the #1 dad medal she'd looped over the lamp. James watched her breathe. The curve of her cheek. The chip in her front tooth from a bicycle fall the summer before her mother died. Memory moved through him like tide pulling shells to the surface. He saw Mara again, color-drained eyes bright with a calm that hadn't belonged to this world. He remembered the taste of hospital coffee, the scrape of a cheap chair, the way he read Charlotte's Web, aloud because it was Bella's favorite. Mara had smiled at the word, radiant, and whispered, "That's you. Don't forget." He had forgotten sometimes. Work, bills, the grind of raising a child alone. But yesterday, standing between a gun and a family, something in him had remembered the word and moved before he could think. Radiant is what love becomes when it refuses to hide. He closed his eyes. He slept. The morning began with rain. Drops tapped the hospital window like restless fingers streaking long lines across the glass. Beyond, the city blurred into silver. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, swallowed by the sound of water rushing off rooftops. James lay awake, listening. Every storm carried him back to the night Mara's accident was reported, back to the phone call that had hollowed him out in one sentence. "There's been a crash." The rain that night had been relentless, too, drumming on the window as he told Bella her mother was never coming home. He turned his head, looking at his daughter, now curled on the vinyl recliner hair, a dark halo across the pillow. She had fallen asleep mid-sentence, book slipping from her lap, tiny chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. He whispered, "Still here, Bella. Still here, Charlotte." Breakfast came and went untouched. He picked at the toast, drank water, let the nurses fuss. Every motion felt heavy, as though his body had been poured from concrete. Yet beneath the weight was a quiet determination. Each ache meant he had survived. Around 9, Dr. Chen appeared, her sneakers squeaking faintly. She carried a chart under her arm, and her eyes softened the moment they landed on Bella. "She's been here every day," Chen said, lowering her voice. "You're lucky, James." "I know," he whispered. Chen checked the monitors, then lowered herself into the chair beside him. "Elena's improving. The treatment's responding." She asked again if she could thank you in person. James's eyes drifted toward the ceiling. "I'm not ready." "Not yet. If I see her, I'll see him." Chen studied him. "And that scares you." "It scares me more than the bullets did." Later that afternoon, Mrs. Jennings returned bundled in a knitted shawl. Her son wheeled her in a small bouquet balanced on her lap. "Mr. Alvarez," she said, her voice frail but steady. "I wanted to see your face again. I wanted you to know what you gave me. More time, time with my son, time I thought I'd lost." James reached for her trembling hand. "You don't owe me thanks. Just live it well." Her son bent low. "He's right, Ma. We will, because of him." James felt the words sink deep, as heavy as the rain outside. As the day stretched, more visitors trickled in. Maria Santos stopped by again with her children. Isabella presented another drawing, this one of James. Lying in a bed, a bright halo above his head, Bella holding his hand. James laughed softly, wincing at the pull in his chest. "You've given me more wings than I deserve." Isabella shook her head fiercely. "Angels don't get to say that." Maria's eyes filled. "You gave me back my family. That makes you ours forever." By evening, the rain eased. The air outside shimmered cleansed. People began to gather again, candles held high despite damp wicks. From his window, James watched them, strangers with tired faces and hopeful eyes. And among them, he saw him. Miguel. 2 officers flanked him, their presence quiet but firm. He wasn't in handcuffs. His head was bowed, candle trembling in his grip. He looked smaller than James remembered. Younger, fragile. Bella gasped softly. "It's him." James nodded. "Yes." They stood in silence, father and daughter side by side, watching a boy who had once been their nightmare, now holding a flicker of light. The radio hissed to life again. Voices from the crowd carried upward. A community leader spoke first, thanking James, urging reforms, reminding the city of families like Elena's. Then, after a long pause, Miguel's voice rose, barely audible, cracking against the static. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope one day to earn it, not with words, but with who I become." James pressed his hand against the glass. His chest ached with something too tangled to name. Bella leaned close, whispering, "He sounds different." "Yes," James murmured. "He does." When the vigil ended, candles flickering out one by one, the night fell quiet again. Bella curled at his side, her head heavy against his arm. James sat awake long after staring at the photo of Maria's children and the note Bella had made. His mind circled the same thought again and again. Second chances are never easy. But maybe they're the only thing worth fighting for. The next morning, Detective Simmons entered holding a folder. "Miguel has been officially approved for supervised visitation. If you want to see him, it can happen as early as tomorrow." James's stomach tightened. "Do I have to decide now?" "No," Simmons said gently. "But he asked me to tell you one thing. He's terrified. Terrified you'll hate him forever. Terrified he can't change. He said he needs to see your eyes once to believe it's possible." James looked at Bella, who watched him with quiet intensity. "Daddy," she whispered, "maybe seeing him will help you too." He nodded slowly, the weight of the decision pressing down. "I'll see him," he said, "tomorrow. That night he dreamed of standing again in the waiting room. But this time when Miguel raised the gun, James didn't rush forward. Instead, he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and the weapon dissolved into dust. He woke with tears on his cheeks and a strange calm in his chest. The morning of the meeting felt heavier than any day since the shooting. James had slept only in fragments, waking often with his heart thundering as if it already knew what was coming. Nurses adjusted his IV, fluffed pillows, checked vitals, but none of it settled the storm inside him. Bella sensed it too. She sat cross-legged in the recliner, hugging her stuffed rabbit eyes, locked on him with a seriousness that didn't belong on a 10-year-old face. "You're scared," she said quietly. James nodded. "I am. But you still said yes." "Yes." She tilted her head. "Isn't that what you always told me? Bravery is doing the right thing even when you're scared." Her words, so simple and sharp, pierced the fog of doubt. He reached out, squeezing her hand. "You're too wise for me, Bella." "I learned from you," she said softly. By late morning, Detective Simmons entered her presence, calm but steady. Behind her came a counselor, a tall man with kind eyes, who introduced himself simply as Marcus. "We'll be with you the whole time," Simmons assured. "If it becomes too much, you say the word and we stop. This is on your terms." James nodded, throat dry. Then the door opened again. Miguel stepped inside. He looked nothing like the wild-eyed boy from the waiting room. His hair was combed, his shoulders stooped, his hands twisting nervously in front of him. His candle from the vigil had left a faint wax burn on his knuckle. His eyes, though they were the same, desperate, searching, full of shame. Behind him, Elena entered slowly, leaning on a cane. Her face was pale skin stretched thin by treatment, but her eyes glowed with a quiet strength. For a moment no one spoke. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Elena broke the silence first. She crossed the room and took James's hand, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Señor Alvarez," she whispered in accented English, "my son told me what you did. Not just that you saved lives, but that you tried to save him too. You listened when no one else did." James swallowed, voice rough. "I did what anyone should do. I saw a boy who loved his mother." Her grip tightened. "Because of you, I am here. Because of you, my son has a chance. I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," James said gently. Miguel stood frozen near the door, shoulders trembling. "Come here," James said quietly. The young man hesitated, then shuffled forward, every step heavy. He sank into the chair beside the bed, staring at the floor. "Look at me," James said. Slowly, Miguel raised his eyes. They brimmed with guilt, pain, fear. James studied him for a long moment. He saw not the gun, not the bullets, but the boy behind them, the son who had wanted to fight for his mother and lost his way. "I forgive you," James said simply. Miguel flinched as though struck. "How I almost killed you. I almost left her without a father, because carrying hate would hurt me more than the bullets did. And because I see you're sorry, really sorry. That matters." Miguel's face crumpled. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. "I don't deserve it." "None of us deserve mercy," James said softly. "But we all need it." Elena placed her frail hand on her son's back, whispering, "Listen to him. This is your second chance. Don't waste it." Miguel wiped his face, nodding furiously. "I won't. I swear I won't. I want to change. I want to help people who feel the way I felt. I don't ever want to pick up a gun again." Marcus, the counselor, leaned forward. "Those are powerful words, Miguel. Change takes time. It takes work. But you've already taken the hardest step, admitting you were wrong." Miguel looked at James again. Can I stay in touch with you? I know I don't deserve it, but I need someone who believes I can be better." James hesitated, then nodded. "We all need someone who believes in us. I'll be that for you. But you have to do the work." Miguel pressed his palms together, bowing his head. "Thank you. Thank you." Bella had been silent the whole time, clutching her rabbit eyes wide. Now she stepped forward, her small voice steady. "Do you promise you'll never scare people like that again?" Miguel turned toward her, eyes wet. "I promise. I'll never hurt anyone again." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Then maybe you can be our friend one day." Her words landed like a blessing. Miguel's tears fell freely. James felt his own eyes burn, his daughter offering grace even greater than his own. After they left, the room fell quiet again. James sank back into the pillows, exhausted but lighter than he had felt in weeks. Dr. Chen entered, eyebrows raised. Well, James managed a tired smile. It wasn't easy, but it was right. She studied him. You amaze me, James. Most people would demand punishment. You ask for healing. He shook his head. I don't amaze anyone. I just know what it feels like to lose everything. I wouldn't wish that on anyone else. That night, as Bella curled beside him again, James whispered into the darkness more to himself than to her. Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing we can give. Bella stirred, half asleep. That's why you're my hero, Daddy. He kissed her forehead, heart full, and for the first time since the bullets ripped through him, he felt whole. The following week blurred into measured routines, therapy sessions, careful steps with a walker, endless paperwork from the hospital administration, and Bella's chatter filling the room like sunlight. But underneath the monotony pulsed something new, a current of possibility. Word of the Alvarez initiative spread quickly. Local news stations covered it daily. Donations poured in for patient support programs. Families with no insurance were calling the hospital, daring to hope they might be seen. James read the headlines reluctantly. He didn't want to be the face of reform, but every time he thought of Elena's tired smile or Miguel's trembling promise, he accepted that maybe this was bigger than him. One morning, Reeves, the hospital COO, returned with contracts neatly stacked. You don't have to sign today, Reeves said, adjusting his tie. But the offer stands. Director of Security, we want your vision. James leafed through the pages slowly. He wasn't impressed by the title or the salary numbers. His eyes stopped on the section outlining crisis response training. Every guard will learn how to de-escalate, Reeves explained. Every nurse will know who to call, and will build partnerships with counseling services. James tapped the page. This is what matters. Reeves smiled. We'll follow your lead. Later that day, James managed his first walk down the corridor without collapsing. Bella walked beside him, her hand hovering near his arm as though ready to catch him. Careful, Daddy, she warned, one step at a time. He chuckled softly. Sounds like something I've told you before. She grinned. Maybe I'm just repeating your best advice. Each step sent pain searing through his leg, but also pride. Patients and nurses paused as he passed, some clapping quietly, some whispering thanks. He nodded, uncomfortable with the attention, but warmed by their eyes. At the end of the hall, Dr. Chen waited, arms folded. Took you long enough, she teased. Saving my energy, he said, leaning on the walker. I plan to walk out of here, not be wheeled. Bella beamed. That's my dad. The next day, a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. James opened it slowly, recognizing the careful penmanship immediately. Mr. Alvarez, that I started counseling. I'm learning how to breathe when panic comes. They gave me books on anger, grief, fear. I didn't realize until now how much I was carrying. I know one letter doesn't erase what I did, but I promised you I would work. This is me working. Thank you for giving me a chance. Miguel James folded the letter gently, tucking it into the drawer with Bella's note and Maria's photo. A small collection of reminders that pain could bend toward hope. That evening, the hospital lobby buzzed louder than usual. James could hear it from his room, the shuffle of many feet, the rise and fall of voices. When Dr. Chen wheeled him downstairs, he understood why. The community had returned, not with candles this time, but with banners. One stretched across the atrium, "Welcome back, Guardian of Metro General." He blushed furiously as applause thundered. Nurses cheered. Patients waved from wheelchairs. Children held signs that read, "Thank you, James." Bella squeezed his hand, grinning ear to ear. "See, you're famous," he muttered. "I preferred grilled cheese fame." She giggled, hugging him. Too late now. The mayor stepped forward, microphone in hand. This hospital stands today not only as a place of healing, but as a place of hope. And that hope has a name, James Alvarez. James shook his head quickly. Please, not just me. Them. All of us. The mayor smiled. Then let's call it what it is. Proof that love is stronger than fear. The crowd erupted. That night, after the excitement faded and Bella was asleep, James sat alone in the dim hospital room. He stared at the skyline beyond the window, the city alive with lights. He thought of Mara, her final smile. He thought of Bella, her fearless questions. He thought of Miguel, a boy who had held death in his hands and now clutched hope instead. And he realized the bullets had not only broken his body, they had carved open a door into something larger than survival, something that might change lives beyond his own. He whispered into the quiet, "Let me walk through it, one step at a time." 2 weeks later, James was discharged. The morning air outside Metro General smelled different, fresh, alive, sharp with spring. He leaned heavily on his cane, Bella's small hand wrapped around his free one as cameras clicked and reporters shouted questions from the sidewalk. He ignored them all. What mattered was the weight of the sun on his face, the feel of Bella's fingers squeezing tight, the knowledge that he was walking out instead of being wheeled. Mrs. Peterson met them at the curb with her old sedan trunk filled with casseroles neighbors had dropped off. "Looks like you won't need to cook for a year." She chuckled. Bella climbed into the back, waving at familiar nurses through the window. James eased into the passenger seat, wincing but smiling. He whispered almost to himself, "Home." Home was small, modest, 2 bedrooms and a faded rug. But stepping through the door felt like crossing a finish line. The first thing James noticed was the smell Bella had sprayed lavender, trying to make it special. On the kitchen table, she'd arranged cards, drawings, even a banner scrawled in marker, "Welcome home, Daddy." His throat tightened. "You did all this?" She nodded proudly. Mrs. Peterson helped hang it. "Do you like it, sweetheart? I love it." They ate dinner together, one of the donated casseroles reheated in the oven. Bella insisted on lighting a candle at the center of the table. "For the people you saved," she said solemnly. James bowed his head, whispering a silent prayer of thanks. That night after Bella fell asleep, James sat on the couch alone. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the faint ticking of the wall clock. He picked up the stack of letters again. Dozens of them had arrived, thank yous, prayers, even a scholarship offer for Bella from an anonymous donor. But one letter lay on top, Miguel's. "I started volunteering at a crisis hotline. I listen to people who feel like I did, angry, trapped, hopeless. Sometimes I don't know what to say, but I tell them what you told me. You're not alone." James rubbed his eyes. He hadn't asked for this bond, but maybe it was part of the healing for both of them. The next Sunday, James and Bella returned to church for the first time in months. As they entered, the congregation turned. Applause rippled through the pews. Bella clung to his arm, wide-eyed. The pastor embraced him. "We prayed for you every day, and for Bella." James sat carefully, wincing, but he felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't known in a long time. During the service, the pastor spoke of courage and forgiveness. James felt Bella's head lean against his shoulder, her small body warm against him. And he thought maybe this was the truest miracle. Not the medals, not the ceremonies, but this simple moment of breathing beside his daughter, alive. That afternoon, Dr. Chen visited the apartment. She carried groceries and a smile that softened her tired face. "You look better," she said, glancing around the cozy space. "Still hurts," James admitted. "But it's good hurt. Healing hurt," Bella piped up. "He walked all the way to the park yesterday." Chen grinned. "That's progress." They shared tea at the table. Conversation drifted from hospital gossip to Bella's school projects. For a moment it felt almost normal, like old friends sharing life instead of survivors reliving trauma. Before she left, Chen touched his arm. "Don't underestimate what you've done, James. You didn't just survive. You changed things." He nodded slowly. "One day at a time." That evening, Bella curled beside him on the couch, sketching in her notebook. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Miguel's really changing?" James considered. "I think he's trying. That's what matters." She drew another line, tongue poking out as she concentrated. "I want to meet him one day, when it's safe." James stared at her, stunned by her courage. "Maybe you will." Bella looked up, eyes bright. "I think Mommy would like that. Forgiving people." His eyes blurred. He kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're braver than I'll ever be." Later, as he tucked her into bed, Bella held his hand. "Daddy?" "Yes. You always tell me you love me more than all the stars." He smiled. "That's true. Well, I love you more than all the heroes in every story." Tears slid down his cheeks as he whispered back, "That's more than enough." That night, James sat at the window city lights twinkling beyond. He thought of the bullets, the boy, the crowd of candles, the second chances. And he realized his story wasn't just about what happened that Tuesday afternoon. It was about what could keep happening if people chose to listen, to forgive, to love. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about being human. Spring stretched into early summer, and each day brought a little more strength back into James's body. He walked farther now down the block with Bella at his side, her hand wrapped tight around his fingers, as if afraid the wind itself might take him. Neighbors waved from porches. Strangers nodded, some whispering. That's him. James hated the spotlight, but he forced himself to smile, to wave back. Because it wasn't just about him, it was about what that day had stirred in people's hearts. At the corner grocery, the clerk slipped extra apples into Bella's bag. At the diner, the waitress refused his money, shaking her head. Your meal's been covered. Each act of kindness left him humbled, but uneasy too. He hadn't saved lives to become a symbol. He'd done it because he couldn't stand still when fear was aimed at children. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in streaks of orange, the doorbell rang. James frowned. Few people came unannounced anymore. Bella raced to the door before he could stop her. She peeked through the peephole, then turned her face lighting up. It's him, Daddy! It's Miguel! James's breath caught. He hobbled forward, heart pounding. When he opened the door, Miguel stood there, clutching a notebook flanked by Detective Simmons, who gave a small nod of reassurance. Mr. Alvarez, Miguel said softly. I didn't mean to intrude. I needed to say thank you again. In your home, where you live, where your daughter feels safe, because I almost took that away. James studied him. The boy's posture was humble, shoulders stooped, eyes downcast. Come in, James said quietly. Inside, Bella perched on the couch, hugging her rabbit, watching Miguel with unblinking eyes. Elena followed, moving carefully with her cane. Her hair had begun to grow back soft gray fuzz that framed her thin face. Still fragile, but stronger than before. She took James's hand in both of hers. Treatment is working. Because of what you did, because the community cared, I have more time with my son. That is the greatest gift. Tears stung James's eyes. I'm glad. Miguel sat on the edge of a chair, clutching the notebook. His fingers trembled as he opened it. I've been writing to understand myself, to keep from going back to that place. He flipped to a page and read aloud. Fear made me believe violence was my only voice. But when Mr. Alvarez spoke my name, he gave me another. He gave me human. He gave me son. He gave me possibility. He lowered the notebook, eyes glistening. I don't know how to repay you. James leaned forward, voice steady. By becoming the man your mother believes you can be. The man you promised you'd be at the vigil. That's payment enough. Miguel nodded, tears spilling. Bella surprised them all. She slid off the couch and walked straight to Miguel, her rabbit clutched in one hand. She held it out. This is Mr. Whiskers. He helps me when I'm scared. You can borrow him for a while. Miguel's face crumpled. He accepted the toy carefully as though it were glass. Thank you. I'll take good care of him. Bella nodded solemnly. Just bring him back when you're ready. James felt his throat tighten until he could barely breathe. His daughter's forgiveness went further than his own. After Elena and Miguel left, Detective Simmons lingered at the door. You've changed him, she said. I see kids in trouble all the time. Most don't get this kind of second chance. You gave him that. James shook his head. No, he's giving it to himself. I just held the door open. Weeks passed. Miguel began sending updates, small victories written in careful letters. I finished my first college application. I started volunteering twice a week at the hotline. I'm reading books about social work. Maybe one day I can help kids like me before they reach for a gun. Each note James tucked into the drawer beside Bella's drawings and Maria's photo. A private archive of redemption. One afternoon, the hospital called. The board had finalized his promotion director of security, his first task launching the crisis intervention team. He accepted, not for prestige, not for the paycheck, but because he knew what was at stake when fear went unheard. Bella celebrated by making another grilled cheese less burnt this time. For Director Dad, she declared proudly. James laughed, ruffling her hair. Still tastes better than any metal. That night, as they stood on the balcony watching the city lights flicker on, Bella leaned against him. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Do you think Mommy sees us? He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, heart heavy and full at once. I believe she does. And I think she's proud. Bella smiled softly. Then I'll keep being brave, like you, like her. James kissed the top of her head. You already are, Bella. You already are. And as the city stretched out before them alive with possibility, James felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope that did not tremble, but stood firm, steady, unafraid. Summer deepened, and with it came a rhythm James hadn't known in years. The days began with Bella's chatter at the breakfast table, her braids bouncing as she rattled off plans for the day, science camp library visits, her secret mission to teach the neighbors cat tricks. James listened, sipping coffee, savoring the normalcy like it was gold. But beneath it all, his body reminded him he wasn't invincible. The ache in his chest flared when he moved too quickly. His legs stiffened if he stood too long. Each scar pulled like a whisper of the bullets he had absorbed. Still, he pushed forward. Every painful step was proof he was alive. His first official day as director of security arrived quietly. No fanfare, no speeches. Just a crisp new badge and a set of keys heavier than the old ones. Walking the hospital halls again, he felt ghosts stir. He could still hear the echoes, the screams, the shots, the sudden silence. But alongside the ghosts came something else. Nurses smiled. Families nodded, patients waved. A janitor paused his mop to clap him on the shoulder. You give us courage just being here, the man said. James nodded, humbled. We give it to each other. In the weeks that followed, he built the program he had dreamed of. He brought in counselors to train security staff in listening skills. He set up a crisis hotline within the hospital. He made sure every guard learned to ask names before raising voices to see the person before the problem. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was. But it was a start. And every time James passed room 314, the place Elena had once waited to die, he felt a quiet strength settle inside him. That room, like him, had been given another chance. Meanwhile, Miguel kept his promise. He visited weekly, sometimes with Elena, sometimes alone. He shared updates with quiet pride. I started community college, he told James one afternoon, shifting nervously in the hospital cafe. Intro to psychology. My professor said, I write like I've lived what I study. You have, James replied, stirring his tea. That's why people will listen. Miguel looked down, voice low. Do you really think I can help others? James leaned forward, steady. I think your scars can guide them out of the dark, if you let them. At home, Bella flourished. She became known as Hero's daughter at school, though she wrinkled her nose at the title. I'm just Bella, she insisted. But when a classmate was bullied for wearing hand-me-down clothes, Bella stood beside her, chin high, eyes unflinching. My daddy says love is stronger than fear, she told the other kids. And something shifted. The teasing stopped. When James heard the story later, he hugged her so tightly, she laughed. Careful, Daddy. You'll break the grilled cheese chef. Late in August, the mayor invited James to a community forum. The auditorium buzzed with hundreds of people, parents, students, workers, leaders. The air smelled of coffee and expectation. James stood at the podium, his cane steady against the floor. Bella sitting proudly in the front row. I don't feel like a hero, he began, voice low but steady. I feel like a father who refused to watch children die. I feel like a man who saw a boy's pain instead of just his gun. And I feel like a community member who knows we can be better if we choose love over fear. The crowd grew silent, hanging on every word. Heroism isn't bullets or medals. It's ordinary people choosing compassion in extraordinary moments. That's all I did. And that's what we all can do. Applause thundered. Bella leapt to her feet, clapping the loudest of all. Afterward, as people crowded around him, Miguel appeared at the edge of the stage. He wore a simple button-down shirt, his notebook tucked under one arm. When their eyes met, James nodded. Miguel smiled, small but real. And in that moment, James knew the boy was walking a new path, one step at a time, just as he was. That night back home, Bella curled against him on the couch. Daddy, she whispered, are you glad you didn't run that day? James thought of the pain, the scars, the fear in Miguel's eyes, the faces of those who lived, because he didn't run. Yes, he said softly. I'm glad. Bella nestled closer. Me too, because now I get to say my daddy is the bravest man I know. His eyes filled. He kissed her hair, and for the first time since that Tuesday afternoon, he believed her. Autumn settled over the city with crisp air and leaves that spun down like embers. For James, each season felt like a milestone, a reminder that he was still here, still walking forward with Bella at his side. Every morning, he woke to her voice. Time to get up. Daddy, the world needs you. She said it half joking, half serious, like she had appointed herself his personal alarm clock. And every time James smiled, even when pain still flared through his chest as he swung his legs out of bed. The scars would never disappear, but neither would the lessons etched into them. At the hospital, the crisis intervention team was taking shape. James walked the halls like a quiet sentinel, training guards not just to watch, but to listen. Don't just scan for danger, he told them one morning during a briefing. Scan for pain, for fear, for someone about to break. A younger guard raised his hand. But sir, what if they still lash out? What if listening isn't enough? James met his eyes steadily. Then we protect. But we always try listening first, because sometimes one kind word can stop a bullet before it's chambered. The room grew silent. The young guard nodded slowly. Meanwhile, Bella was thriving. She had started a small club at school with her friends, calling it the Kindness Crew. Their mission to sit with kids who ate alone, share lunches, and write anonymous notes of encouragement. She showed James one of the notes she'd written, "You're not invisible. We see you. You matter." James's eyes stung as he read it. "You're changing the world already," he told her. She shrugged, smiling shyly. "I'm just being like you, Daddy." Miguel visited often now, not under guard, but on his own. His posture had changed. He stood straighter, looked people in the eye. He brought homework, sometimes asking James for advice. One evening, over tea at James's kitchen table, he admitted, "I still have nightmares. About that day. About you falling. About the sound of the gun." James listened quietly, then said, "Nightmares don't define you. What you do when you wake up does." Miguel nodded, writing the words into his notebook. "Then I'll wake up better." In late October, the city planned the Medal of Valor ceremony. The auditorium filled to the brim. Nurses, patients, families, officials, neighbors. Bella sat in the front row in her best dress, bouncing with excitement. When James's name was called, he walked slowly across the stage, cane steady, heart pounding. The applause was deafening. The mayor placed the medal around his neck. The weight of it surprised him, but what stunned him more was the sight of Bella beaming in the crowd, tears shining in her eyes. When he stepped to the microphone, the room fell silent. "I don't feel like a hero," he began. "I feel like a father who chose to protect. I feel like a man who saw a boy's desperation and refused to see only his weapon. If you call that heroism, then maybe all of us have it in us." He paused, scanning the audience. Miguel and Elena sat near the back, watching quietly. "Fear divides us," James continued. "But love unites. Forgiveness heals. And courage is not the absence of fear, it's doing what's right in spite of it." The audience rose applause, echoing like thunder. Bella stood tall, clapping the loudest, shouting, "That's my daddy!" Afterward, reporters swarmed. But James slipped away to the side hall where Miguel waited nervously. "You spoke the truth," Miguel said, voice low. "People will listen." James rested a hand on his shoulder. "So must you. Speak it every day in what you do." Miguel nodded, determination in his eyes. "I will." That night back at the apartment, Bella placed the medal on the dresser. She held it up to the light, watching it glint. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. You don't need this medal to be my hero. You already were. Before all of this," James pulled her close, tears slipping down his cheek. "That's the only medal I'll ever need." As autumn leaves swirled outside, James realized something. He hadn't just survived. He hadn't just saved lives. He had lit a spark, and now others were carrying the flame. Winter crept in quietly, frosting rooftops and glazing sidewalks. The cold bit at James's lungs when he walked Bella to school, but he welcomed it. It reminded him he was alive, breathing air that once almost slipped away. Bella skipped ahead in her red coat boots, crunching snow, waving at neighbors who greeted her warmly. Everyone in the block seemed to know her now. Hero's daughter. They whispered with affection. She hated the nickname, but James noticed she carried it anyway, not with pride, but with purpose. She smiled at lonely neighbors offered to carry groceries and insisted on shoveling the steps for Mrs. Peterson. It was as if she'd inherited the duty of light from him and made it her own. The Alvarez initiative had grown. The hospital now had a dedicated crisis response center. James walked the halls, daily greeting guards by name, reviewing cases where kindness made a difference. One report stood out, a man storming into the ER furious about a wait time demanding attention. Instead of force, the new team sat him down, listened, calmed him until tears replaced rage. He revealed he'd just lost his job, terrified he couldn't pay for his child's medicine. The team arranged emergency aid, guided him to financial help. No violence, no arrests, just compassion. Reading the report, James felt his chest swell, not with pride, but with relief. The system was working. Miguel became a frequent face at the hospital, two shadowing social workers asking endless questions. One evening, James spotted him helping a frightened teenager fill out insurance forms. Afterward, Miguel came to him hesitant. It feels good to help, but sometimes I feel like I don't deserve to. James looked at him firmly. Deserve has nothing to do with it. Service is what heals us, Miguel. Them and us. Miguel nodded, scribbling into his notebook. His hands didn't tremble as much anymore. At home, Bella's kindness club expanded beyond school. She convinced James to let her host meetings in their living room. Soon 5 children gathered weekly, sprawled on the rug, plotting new missions. One boy suggested baking cookies for the firehouse. A girl wanted to make cards for cancer patients. Bella led with quiet authority, her eyes bright. James watched from the kitchen, amazed. His daughter was building something he couldn't have dreamed of at her age, a movement born from innocence, but powered by conviction. Later that night, as he tucked her in, she whispered, "We're making the world softer, Daddy." He kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, softer and stronger." In December, snow fell heavy, blanketing the city. One evening, as James and Bella decorated their small tree, the doorbell rang. Standing there was Miguel, cheeks flushed from the cold, Elena beside him wrapped in a scarf. She looked healthier now, color returning to her face. "We brought something," Miguel said shyly, lifting a box. Inside were tamales, warm and fragrant. Elena smiled. "Family recipe. To thank you for everything." They ate together, laughter filling the apartment, the scent of masa and cinnamon tea lingering in the air. Bella chatted with Elena as if they had known each other for years. When Miguel left that night, he handed James a folded paper. Inside was an acceptance letter. University transfer, major in social work. "I start in January," Miguel said, pride trembling in his voice. James clasped his shoulder. "Then you're already building the man you promised to be." On Christmas morning, Bella handed James a small box wrapped in shiny paper. Inside was a necklace with a charm, simple, a tiny silver star. "So you remember," she whispered, "that I love you more than all the stars." James pulled her into his arms, tears stinging his eyes. "And I love you more than all the fish in the ocean." Their ritual born from grief had carried them through bullets, fear, and healing. Now it shone brighter than ever. That night, as snow drifted softly outside, James sat at the window watching lights glow across the city. He thought of the waiting room, the fear, the pain. But tonight all he saw was light, the light of candles, the light of forgiveness, the light of a little girl's star charm resting against his chest. And he whispered into the quiet, "This is what surviving is for, not just to live, but to love louder than fear." The new year dawned crisp and bright, the streets glittering with frost. For James, it felt like more than a change in calendar. It felt like proof that time still belonged to him, that every sunrise was a gift he refused to take for granted. Bella woke early, bounding into his room in her pajamas, dragging her stuffed rabbit by the ear. She leapt onto his bed, laughing. "Happy New Year." Daddy James winced at the bounce, his chest still tender, but he laughed too. "Happy New Year, sweetheart." She curled against him, whispering, "This year's going to be the best." "I can feel it." And James, holding her close, believed her. At the hospital, the crisis response team gained momentum. Reports of confrontations diffused peacefully grew weekly. Staff morale lifted. Families who once left the hospital bitter now left hopeful. James walked the halls with a cane still healing, but his eyes sharp, his heart steady. Everywhere he turned, he saw reminders, guards greeting patients by name, nurses stopping to listen, volunteers guiding lost visitors. It was working. One evening, as he stood in the lobby watching a counselor soothe an anxious patient, Reeves approached. "This place is different," the COO said quietly. "And it's because of you." James shook his head. "It's because of all of us deciding people matter more than policies." Reeves smiled. "Well, we needed you to remind us." Miguel thrived in his new classes. He carried textbooks everywhere, filling margins with notes, scribbling ideas into his ever-present notebook. One afternoon, he stopped by James's office. "I joined a student group," he said, almost shy. "We're working on a campaign to make mental health counseling free for community college students." James leaned back in his chair, impressed. "That's a fight worth having." Miguel's eyes shone. "I keep thinking if someone had listened sooner, maybe I wouldn't have reached for a gun. I want to be that listener for someone else." James nodded. "Then you're already becoming the man you promised." At home, Bella continued her kindness club. The children's laughter filled the apartment crayons, scattered across the floor as they made cards for soldiers overseas. James watched them, struck by how ordinary it looked, children sprawled in giggles, a cluttered living room, the smell of popcorn. Yet under that ordinary glow pulsed something extraordinary. Out of pain, his daughter had chosen light, and she was teaching others to do the same. That night, as he tucked her into bed, Bella asked Daddy, "Do you think the world's getting better?" James brushed her hair back, thinking, "Not all at once, but piece by piece, candle by candle, person by person." She smiled sleepily. "Then let's keep adding candles." February brought snowstorms that buried the city in white. James trudged through drifts with Bella, laughing as they built a crooked snowman outside their building. Neighbors came out too, shoveling sidewalks together, passing thermoses of hot cocoa. Community felt different now, closer, warmer. As they worked, Mrs. Jennings approached, bundled in her shawl. Her son wheeled her across the cleared sidewalk. She handed James a folded note. Inside, "Thank you for my extra Christmas, for my extra days with my family. Every sunrise feels like borrowed grace, and I owe that to you." James's throat tightened. He hugged her gently, whispering, "We owe it to each other." One afternoon, James found himself alone in the hospital chapel. Sunlight poured through stained glass, scattering colors across the pews. He sat in the quiet cane, leaning against the bench, breathing in the stillness. He remembered the bullets, the terror, the moment he thought of Bella, and whispered her name as the world dimmed. And then he remembered the candles outside his window, the voices that had risen together, the forgiveness he had offered Miguel. He bowed his head, whispering a simple prayer. "Thank you for second chances." That evening, Bella climbed into his lap with a stack of mail. Among the bills and letters was another envelope from Miguel. James opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing, not by Miguel, but by a group of kids from a youth shelter where he had started volunteering. The note read, "These kids say thank you for believing in me. Because you believed in me, I can believe in them." James held the drawing, a cluster of stick figures, under a banner that read, "Hope lives here." Bella leaned close, smiling. "Looks like we're not the only kindness club anymore." James laughed softly, pulling her into his arms. "No, sweetheart. We started something bigger." That night, as snow drifted outside and the city lay quiet, James stood at the window. Bella asleep in her room. He touched the scar on his chest, feeling the roughness beneath his shirt. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a doorway. And he whispered, steady and sure, "Love is stronger than fear. Always." March arrived with thawing snow and the first hints of green pressing through the soil. For James, it felt like the city itself was exhaling after holding its breath all winter. Each morning, he and Bella walked farther. The cane tapped less often, his steps grew steadier. Bella timed his strides, pretending she was his coach. "You're faster today," she said proudly. "At this rate, you'll be running marathons." James chuckled, shaking his head. One miracle at a time. The hospital's Crisis Response Center held its first official open house. Families, patients, and staff crowded the lobby, curious to see the changes. James gave a short tour showing the new counseling offices, the volunteer desk, the hotline phones ringing steadily in the corner. "This isn't about me," he told the crowd. "It's about us, about making sure no one feels unheard." A woman in the back raised her hand. My brother came here last week furious about a bill. Instead of security dragging him out, someone sat him down. They worked it out. He came home calm. You saved him without even being there. Applause rose. James felt heat rise to his cheeks, but he bowed his head, humbled. Miguel stood near the edge of the crowd, his notebook tucked under one arm. When the applause faded, he stepped forward. I'm proof this program works, he said, his voice clear, steady. Because someone listened to me when I didn't deserve it. Because someone believed I could be more than my worst mistake. All eyes turned toward him. For a moment, James saw the trembling boy with a gun. But now Miguel's shoulders were squared, his voice sure. I will never forget what I did, Miguel continued. But I will spend my life making sure others never feel as desperate as I did that day. That's the promise I made to Mr. Alvarez and to myself. The room erupted with applause again. Some people moved to tears. James felt his chest ache, not from the scars this time, but from pride. At home, Bella worked on a school project. My hero. She sat at the kitchen table, crayons scattered everywhere, tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she drew. James watched her, curious. Who's your hero? She looked up, eyes twinkling. You, of course, he chuckled. Sweetheart, you could have picked anyone. A scientist, an astronaut, even your teacher. She shook her head firmly. No. My hero is the man who loves people even when they hurt him. My hero is the man who taught me forgiveness is braver than anger. James swallowed hard, unable to answer. Bella grinned, sliding the drawing toward him, the two of them holding hands, surrounded by stars and fish. One evening in late March, James and Bella joined Miguel and Elena at a small community event downtown. It wasn't grand, just folding chairs in a church hall, coffee and styrofoam cups, and a circle of people sharing stories of second chances. One by one, voices rose. A woman recovering from addiction, a man who had served time and now mentored youth, a teacher who'd once been homeless. When it was Miguel's turn, he glanced at James nervously. James nodded. Miguel spoke softly but firmly. I once thought my life was over. I made a choice that could have destroyed everything, but someone chose to see me as a son, not a criminal. And that choice changed me. He sat down, eyes wet but proud. Elena squeezed James's hand. You gave me back my son, she whispered. James shook his head. He gave himself back. I just stood in the way of fear long enough for him to see it. By April, the city invited James to speak at a larger conference on community safety. Bella sat in the front row, swinging her legs, proud as ever. James took the stage cane by his side, microphone in hand. People call me a hero, he began. But heroism isn't about bullets or medals. It's about choice. About seeing humanity where fear tells you to see only danger. He looked out across the crowd. Politicians, police officers, teachers, parents. We cannot build safety on punishment alone. We build it on compassion, on listening, on second chances. The applause rose, but James's eyes sought Bella. She grinned, flashing him a thumbs up. That night back home, Bella curled beside him on the couch. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Do you ever wish that day never happened? James hesitated. He thought of the pain, the scars, the fear, but he also thought of Miguel studying to be a social worker, of Elena alive to see her son's change, of Bella leading her kindness club, of the hospital saving more lives than ever. He kissed her forehead softly. I wouldn't wish bullets on anyone, but I don't wish away what came after. Bella nodded thoughtfully. So, it was terrible, but it made good things too. Exactly, James whispered. Love turned it into something more. As spring warmed the city, James realized something profound. He hadn't just survived that day in the waiting room. He had been transformed by it, and so had everyone around him. May unfolded with warm breezes and lilacs blooming along the hospital sidewalks. James walked more steadily now, his cane mostly symbolic, a reminder of how far he'd come. Bella often teased him, racing ahead, then circling back to walk beside him, her hand swinging in his. Faster, Daddy, she'd say with a grin. You're not old yet. He'd laugh, chest aching but heart full. Don't be so sure. The hospital lobby displayed a new plaque, the Alvarez Initiative, dedicated to listening, protecting, and healing. James paused before it one morning, tracing the engraved letters with his fingers. He didn't see his name as recognition. He saw it as responsibility, a promise he had to keep living. Miguel flourished at school. He sent letters almost weekly, his words brimming with determination. Professor said, "I have a gift for listening." I didn't know silence could be a gift until now. Started volunteering at the youth shelter. One kid told me he was thinking of doing something stupid. I told him my story. He cried. Then he stayed. Each letter James tucked carefully into his drawer. Not trophies, testaments. Proof that second chances could ripple outward like stones in water. Bella thrived too. Her kindness club had doubled in size. Parents from the neighborhood dropped their children off at the apartment laughing that James had accidentally hosted a movement. One evening, Bella presented him with a poster the kids had made, "Choose Love Over Fear." Crayon stars filled the background. James taped it proudly to the fridge where he could see it every morning. June brought the official Medal of Valor ceremony at City Hall. The auditorium overflowed officials, neighbors, families, and strangers who simply wanted to witness. Bella sat in the front row, her hand gripping Mrs. Peterson's. Miguel and Elena sat quietly near the back, tears already glistening before the ceremony began. When James walked on stage, applause roared like thunder. The mayor draped the medal over his shoulders, but James raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "I need you to hear this," he said, voice firm. "I am not a hero because I took bullets. I am not a hero because I wear this medal. If I am anything, it's because I chose to see a boy's pain instead of only his weapon. I chose to protect strangers as if they were family. And I chose love when fear demanded hate." The room grew still, breathless. Real heroes. James continued, are the doctors who work endless nights, the teachers shaping young minds, the parents sacrificing for their children. Real heroes are the ones who forgive when they could condemn, who love when they could fear. His gaze found Bella in the crowd. Real heroes are our children who remind us every day what matters most. The auditorium erupted again, people rising to their feet, clapping, cheering, many crying. Bella stood tall, clapping hardest of all, shouting, "That's my daddy!" That evening at the reception, Miguel approached with his acceptance letter to a 4-year university in hand. "Social work major," he said proudly. "I'm going to help kids find hope before they ever think of guns." James clasped his shoulder, voice thick. "I'm proud of you, Miguel. Your mother is too." Elena wiped tears, nodding. "You gave me back my son." James shook his head gently. "No." He gave himself back. "I just believed long enough for him to find the way." Later, walking home beneath street lamps with Bella skipping beside him, James felt the weight of the medal around his neck. He slipped it off, handing it to her. She turned it over in her hands, eyes wide. "Can I keep it?" "It was always yours," he said softly. She hugged him fiercely. "You don't have to be shot to be my hero, Daddy. You always were." He kissed her forehead, tears slipping down his cheeks. "And you, Bella, are mine." That night, as he tucked her into bed, she whispered their ritual. "I love you more than all the fish in the ocean." James smiled through tears. "And I love you more than all the stars in the sky." She giggled sleepily. "Then we win." "Yes, sweetheart," James whispered. "We win." James sat at his window after she slept, the medal glinting on the dresser, Bella's drawings taped to the wall. He thought of the bullets, the boy, the candles, the forgiveness, and he knew the truth. The hero next door wasn't special because he was bulletproof. He was special because he had chosen love over fear again and again, even when it cost him everything. And in doing so, he had reminded an entire community that heroism lives in all of us, waiting for the moment we decide to act. The scars would fade, but the light born from them would not. Not for Miguel, not for Elena, not for Bella, not for anyone who had seen what love could do when it stood unafraid. Your thoughts will help us create meaningful stories. And if you want to hear more powerful healing stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And most importantly, share this video with people who need a little hope today. Thank you so much for your time. We hear you, we listen to you, and we are honored to tell these stories for you.